The courtroom was full, yet silence reigned. A silence so piercing it screamed with pain. The dim light of an old chandelier, the rhythmic ticking of Soviet wall clocks, the echo of coughs and footsteps on the wooden floor. It all felt like a dream, confined in a corridor, frozen in place. Anna's hands were clasped together, her fingers cold, pale. She tried to hide the trembling of her lips, but her eyes betrayed the pain and the silent plea within them. Directly opposite her, on the other side of the hall, sat Dmitry Sergeyevich, with complete calmness and arrogance. That same smile adorned his face, the one only a victor wears. But it was not a smile of love. It was the smile of a man who had just broken another's heart. He leaned forward slightly, looked at Anna, and said softly, "Well then, freedom at last." He picked up the pen, let his gaze linger on Anna for a moment, as if pitying a defeated enemy, and signed the divorce papers, as though it were nothing but a formality. No more than that. Anna's eyelashes quivered. Tears shimmered on the edges of her eyes, as though a storm raged inside her. But she remained silent, as if her tongue had turned heavy, or perhaps time itself had stolen everything from her. Her feelings, her voice, her breath. In her mind, she heard the voice of her late father. "Alexey Ivanovich, my daughter, never lower your head. Even if everyone leaves you, I will stay by your side." At that moment, Judge Petrov adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and spoke in a deep, confident voice. "The divorce is officially confirmed. However, before closing this session, there is one important will that must be read." Anna flinched and looked at the judge. And Dmitry? His smile, just moments ago full of poison and smugness, began to fade slowly. The judge swiftly pulled out a folder and announced, "This is the will of Mr. Alexey Ivanovich, the father of Ms. Anna Alexeyevna." The courtroom once again sank into absolute silence, as if even the air had stopped moving. For the first time, a faint crease of worry appeared on Dmitry's forehead. And Anna, she still sat in her place, but now her eyes held not only tears. There was quiet, steady strength there, as though at last a light had appeared at the end of the tunnel. The silence was so dense that it seemed if a pin dropped, its sound would echo off the walls. All eyes were fixed on the judge. Anna's breath caught. She knew what was written in those documents, but her heart still raced, as though this was the very moment she had waited for all these years. And yet she trembled. Dmitry no longer sat as confidently as a minute ago. His hands, once relaxed on the table, clenched into fists. Wrinkles appeared on his forehead, not from confusion but from fear. The judge took a deep breath and began reading aloud. "I, Alexey Ivanovich, being of sound mind and memory, hereby make this will. I bequeath all my property, apartments in central Moscow, the wine factory, foreign bank accounts, and all other assets, exclusively to my daughter, Anna Alexeyevna." Dmitry's eyes widened. He jerked violently, as though the chair beneath him had suddenly vanished. "All my life I have seen much. I have watched my daughter suffer, cry in solitude and remain silent, never once complaining to me. I know that Dmitry Sergeyevich married her for money. His love was a game, a falsehood, and my daughter only a means to his end. Therefore I state plainly, Dmitry Sergeyevich has no right whatsoever to my inheritance." The hall grew even quieter. It seemed no one breathed. The hopeless silence on Anna's face was gone. Now in her gaze burned a deep, restrained confidence, the look of a soldier who had survived hundreds of battles, and finally won the last one. Dmitry's fists tightened harder. He looked at Anna. In his eyes bewilderment, as though he could not face the truth. He shoved his chair back abruptly, but remained seated, as if still hoping the judge would turn another page. Perhaps there would be a line for him. Something, anything. But the judge closed the folder. "The will is concluded. It is fully legitimate and confirmed by the court." Dmitry collapsed back into his chair, as though all air had left his body. There was no anger on his face, no shame, only emptiness. His pride, his arrogance, crumbled to dust. Anna glanced at him once. Her gaze was cold, calm, yet filled with inner dignity. In that look was no revenge, only silent farewell. "You are no longer part of my life." Inside Dmitry a hurricane raged. Outwardly he sat still, but within him a storm thundered. Every word Judge Petrov had read lashed at his ego like a whip. Before his eyes crumbled all the dreams he had built around Anna's inheritance, dreams of power, money, influence. Leaving the courtroom his steps faltered, as though he were drunk. But it was not wine that clouded him. It was the intoxication of loss. of ruined ambitions. By the fountain, Anna stood silently, in her hands the same blue file, with which she had once brought the divorce papers. Now inside it lay her father's will. Dmitri stopped, and for the first time looked at Anna, not with the eyes of a victor, but with the eyes of a man, faced with the truth. His voice trembled, but he managed to speak. You knew. She nodded. Her voice was soft, but every word carried restrained strength. Yes, I knew. But I wanted the truth to reveal itself to you, without quarrels, without noise, simply as it is. Dmitri clenched his fists, as though still hoping to see something back. You deceived me. You hid everything. Anna's eyes no longer held tears. She did not cry. She was no longer weak. I hid nothing, Dmitri. You simply never asked. You only cared about what I had, never who I was beside you. Dmitri fell silent. Those words struck his very core. The last wall within him collapsed. After several seconds he turned and left. Without a word. Without apology. Without goodbye. His steps dragged across the floor. He had come to win, but left having lost everything. Anna stood a little longer. The wind played with her hair, as though her father's last blessing was wrapping around her. Then she took a deep breath, clutched the folder to her chest, and stepped forward, toward a new life. She was no longer alone. With her remained her truth, her dignity, and her father's love. Weeks passed, but for Dmitri time seemed frozen. He still lived in his old apartment, but light had abandoned it forever. The expensive paintings on the walls now stared at him mockingly. Once they had impressed others. Now they only reminded him of the emptiness of his achievements. One evening he stood by the window, watching the cars pass below. The world outside went on living, but Dmitri's world had stopped. Anna's last words echoed still. You never even tried to understand. Who was beside you? Suddenly there was a knock at the door. Dmitri flinched, as though hearing the sound for the first time in years. He opened it. On the threshold stood his old friend, Alexei, holding 2 cups of coffee, with that warm expression Dmitri had not seen in so long. Just thought I'd stop by. You disappeared. Everyone's asking. Where's Dmitri? Here, Dmitri muttered, forcing a smile. Letting him in. Over coffee, Alexei asked, why did everything go to Anna in the will? You were her husband. Dmitri sighed heavily. His eyes were fixed on the void. Because only she deserved it. I wanted only her name, her inheritance. But I never understood her heart. Alexei fell silent. After a moment he nodded. You can still change everything, my friend. Life isn't over. Dmitri turned to the window. Somewhere deep in his memory, Anna's face surfaced. Calm, strong, free. Meanwhile, Anna was beginning a new life. She was building a charitable center. On her father's old lands. For children, for women. For all those without a voice. Every brick she laid seemed to bring her father's dreams to life. On her face was peace. In her heart, confidence. She answered the world with her truth. Now she wished to be the voice of those who had been silent for years. One day, while watching the construction, a little girl approached and asked, did you build all of this? Anna smiled and replied, no, we built it all together. The girl looked at her in wonder. How? Anna placed a hand on her shoulder. With love, with truth, and with faith, that when we lose, our true victory begins. Sunlight fell upon her face, as though nature itself was welcoming her new life. And so the story ended with an important lesson. Strength does not come from wealth, but from truth and dignity.